you can bring out the best in your children. And I invite you tonight just to sit back and come with an open heart for positive change. Just get in a place of curiosity and wondering how you could bring small but big shifts of transformation to your family. And just know this is a 100% judgment free community. Okay. A little bit about me. It's important to know that I am a white, straight, cisgender, able bodied, I come from a privileged perspective that I'm teaching tonight. Okay. I am a single mom to a 12-year-old, certified in positive discipline. I have a 20-year background in working with kids and a master's in conflict resolution. I am a child abuse survivor. So, that, in addition to my own experience with high stress parenting when my son was little, allows me to show up and really support all of you to help you work with your very real everyday stress, especially during the pandemic. And what I do in my practice is I help families create your happy home and raise kids who thrive. Okay. So let's go ahead and just dive in parenting during the pandemic. So what is pandemic? When you Google it, it says when the whole world is affected by a disease. The whole world is working with a disease, and we are battling two diseases, COVID-19 and racism, in our country and in our world. Then it really is the time for healing. Okay. We are also battling another disease right now, and that is the lack of priority and support for emotional well-being and mental health in families during this time. Okay. So, as we said before, there's this spectrum of stress in families. And unfortunately, this time has magnified the inequities and injustices in our world around systemic racism. Okay. It is imperative that we all contribute to the civil rights movement of our lifetime. You can do that just by making a small monthly contribution if your family is able, or a large one to some of these organizations. You're welcome to screenshot this list, getting on their mailing list. There's some great Facebook groups you can get involved with right now. The Families for Educational Equity Facebook group is actually led by Washington County moms. Okay. Okay. There's also the Facebook group Moms United for Black Lives and Mom Blocks PDX. Okay. We have some amazing, if you're here from Washington County, Oregon, we have some amazing elected officials that you can support their work, advocating for change in our schools and police forces, and requesting the anti-racism education resource list that I've compiled. Within that, just encouraging people, we're all under such stress, but then also to get involved as we are able in supporting, again, the civil rights movement of our lifetime. Okay, so within that, let's get with that broader where we are as a country. Let's go ahead and look at change within your home and what has been stressful about this pandemic stay-at-home time. Really, we are all living under a magnifying glass, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. And now, when things are closing down again, we are all confined to the four walls of our home. And any behavioral challenge we may have had with our kids before, it's definitely heightened. And a lot of families are in negative patterns and negative behavior cycles. Okay. And just know you're not alone if you identify with that. A lot of kids and parents are facing social disconnect and loneliness. There's the increase in screen time, which is inevitable during the pandemic. And then there's the increase in screen time where parents are concerned for their kids. And then there's concerns and challenges around schooling and the work from home, and the increase in anxiety and depression during this time. Okay. Compassion is the key to your transformation. It's important that you are really gentle and graceful with yourself during this time. There is nothing normal about this time of parenting in the pandemic. Okay. So we want to give you tools that are responsive to all these challenges that families are working with, okay? What have you been, not even talking about challenges, but if you think back of since March 2020, what have been the major changes in your family that your family has experienced? I think if we take a moment to reflect on how much we've all had to adjust and pivot, that you can really see that just by being, just by existing and parenting every day, we are all doing so much. So, what have been some of those main changes in your family? Okay. My focus is in positive parenting, okay, and a strength based approach. So, positive parenting, by definition, is defined as the continual relationship of parents or caregivers and a child that includes caring, teaching, leading, communicating, and providing for the needs of a child consistently and unconditionally. Okay. It is a big calling that we're doing every day. It is so challenging during this time to maintain a positive parenting approach where you are caring and you're teaching, you're leading, communicating, and providing for the needs of your children consistently and unconditionally if we're also experiencing all of this. Okay, so again, having compassion for yourself during this time. Within that, we're going to go ahead now and dive into the reality of stress and support. Okay. And so within that, if you want to think of, I'm going to turn this off for a moment. If you want to think of like that list of stressors, and you may have more stressors in your family, if you think of it like a scale, right? You've got all your stressors that are on one side, right? And they're probably pretty heavy. Well, our goal in positive parenting and during this time is to help you ensure and work towards having your incoming support at least balance out your stress, right? That's the goal. Because when they are in balance or the support weighs heavier than the stress, then you're able to show up in that unconditional way with your children. Okay. So, thinking about this time in terms of the reality of stress and your incoming support. And when I say incoming support, that may also be the resources within you. So, think for a moment, what have been, or maybe currently, what are your top 3 areas of stress? And again, you're welcome to use the chat if you'd like to. And then, what are your top areas of support? The goal here is if you can anticipate and acknowledge what your stressors are, then hopefully you can bring in the support for those areas. It's also important, I would say, even if you write out your top areas of support during this time, and for some people, it's, someone that you can connect with, it's an activity you're doing for yourself. It's just important that you know your top areas of support for yourself. So when life gets really stressful, then you can lean into your support. Okay. In this next, so if you want to share your top current parenting stress, and then also your top area of support in your life right now, welcome to share that in the chat. And here's an image to talk about the support versus stress. Okay. So keep in mind that you really are the best gift your children can ever have. So how can you start thinking of taking care of yourself like the gift that you are? My programs are called Happy Home, right? You really are the structure and the foundation of your happy home. A happy home from your children starts with the support that we have for you as a parent, okay? Specifically, this might look at scheduling in more care for you time, like you would any non-optional activity. It's always ironic with parents because we'll schedule in our children's activities and now they might be more like on Outschool or Zoom. But do we take our own time for ourselves and care for ourselves activities? Do we value those as much as our kids' activities that we wouldn't miss? And if there's a way that you can, this is a time really to come together and helping one another. Is there a way that you can open up to receiving more support if you need it, or asking for support, creating those networks of support? Or maybe if you are in a place of relative stability, how can you offer support to the parents in your community? Okay. So a big part of your pandemic parenting plan is focusing on increasing your support and then decreasing your stress. Okay. And there's this quote from Brene Brown that says, the most compassionate people I interviewed in her research also have the most well-defined and respected boundaries. So what I'm inviting parents to do during this time, and I will invite you to do tonight, is there something you can let go of from your responsibilities? Something that is optional and you're doing it anyway? Is there something that you can say no to? Because part of increasing support may be taking off some of the stressors that you're able to. Okay. I really do appreciate, you can look this up, this infographic, the Coalition for Compassionate Care of California. And this was designed for frontline workers, for healthcare workers. Okay. It really does apply to parenting as well. And this is something that you're welcome to, if you're on Facebook, you can look it up. You're welcome to take a screenshot of it. This is something that you can just check in with yourself on a daily basis. Where am I at right now? Am I in a thriving place where I feel like I got this? Do you feel like, okay, in this moment, I'm more in a surviving place, like something isn't right? Struggling, I can't keep this up. This way of life isn't sustainable. In crisis, I can't survive this. And if you feel like your family is in crisis, you are welcome. I love just trying to help parents access resources and referrals. So please feel free to reach out for me or route to me. So as prioritizing emotional well-being and mental health, a big part of it is just being a good friend to yourself, just checking in with yourself. And why is this important? Because then you're going to know what to expect of yourself and your children in a day. And you're going to set yourself up for success, for lack of a better word, but for responsive caregiving of yourself, so you can offer that to your children. Okay, so this is something that you can check in with daily. You can be a gentle observer. So you're seeing clearly where you're at in this moment, and maybe you connect with like different areas in different ways, and then having compassion for yourself, for your children, and for the situation that you're in. Okay. Specifically, I would love you to think, and even for everyone to declare one thing that you can let go of during this time. That might be doing less, saying no, letting go of non-essentials, lowering expectations, meeting basic needs. We're going to talk more about that in a minute, as well as focusing on positive relationship or boundaries. A lot of times I work with families on boundaries for extended family. Okay. What is coming up for parents a lot in this area is the should voice. Okay. And if you have had like a should, like, I should be able to handle this, like my kids should be able to show up for virtual school and get their assignments in, isn't everyone else? And it goes back and transformed right now, not necessarily for the better. And we have increased our job responsibilities, like, so please just be aware of those should voice. And when that should voice comes up, you can, I recommend like literally pretending like you're waving to it. You know, we have shoulds a lot around our kids' behavior as well. And see if there's a value. Try and turn that should into a value. Like, I value my home being clean, right? See if you can turn it into the value. I value having respectful children, because then with the value, you can turn it into hot skill then, or how to make that value come alive in your life. And then sometimes the shoulds are literally just about societal expectations. And part of this stress reduction is maybe tuning into your inner rebel a little bit, asking for accommodations from the teacher, letting things go, and really sending that should voice out the window. Okay. If you are relating to that and have had should voice during this time, I'd love to hear. Remember, your sharing does empower other parents as well, especially around the shoulds. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit. I think I'm just going to check out the chat briefly. We're going to dive into the brain science of stress right now. Let go of cooking all the time. I can do drive through. Yes, yes. Support everyone home so have stronger a bond. Yeah, that's beautiful, right? That's one of the silver linings of this time. Less outside extracurricular activities during our schedule, to its limits. Yes, right. So I'm assuming that might be outside of, oh yeah, so driving our schedule to its limits, right? So like less expectation, stress, how to get kids to move more and go outside more, definitely limit screen time and deal with attitude. Yep. I'm guessing maybe you have a little bit older kids, because that sounds familiar with what I'm working with my 12-year-old. And that's a thing to remember. We really are all in this together. Stress, kids missing normal. Yes, normal, exactly. Support creating new traditions and connections. Bad attitudes when asked to get off screens. Yes. Families together all the time. No, sir. Yes, definitely. So a lot of us are sharing a lot of common. I did drive through tonight. Yay. Okay. Let's go ahead now. Now that we're under, like, spending some time reflecting on the incoming support and then the stress. Well, why is this so important? And what actually is going on in our brain under high stress, okay? When we understand the brain science, it really liberates us, because when we're having challenging parenting moments and we feel upset by our kids' behavior, a lot of times the parenting guilt can come in afterwards. And that's another thing that, we can work towards letting go of. So with this brain science of stress, I want you to understand that it is a physiological response that we have in our brains when we're under stress as a parent, just like breathing and our heart beating. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into that. You might be familiar with Dr. Dan Siegel and Brain in the Palm of Your Hand. If not, you can Google that. Link at the bottom. It's just a 2-minute video that you can watch. Okay. And I'll do a quick overview on the three parts of the brain. So we can use our hand as a model of our brain. Right here is the brain, it represents the brainstem. And the brainstem is back here. It's the oldest part of our brain. It develops first in babies, and it's the part of our brain that we also share with reptiles. It controls things we don't have to think about, things that are on autopilot as far as body functions go, like our breathing and like our heart rate. Okay. In the brainstem, also is responsible for the stress response system. So if you think about like when humans lived out in the wilds, if there was a animal attacking, some of us might try and fight that animal. Some of us might try and run from the animal. And maybe others of us would freeze up and that kind of play dead response. Okay. We still have that stress response in us, even though we're not living next to wild animals anymore. Okay. So moving upward is the thumb, which represents the limbic system, emotions and memories. Um, and as well as the amygdala, which is known as the security, like the security guard of our lives. It's responsible for anger and fear. Okay. Moving upward is the cortex, and then the prefrontal cortex, okay, which is right here in our brain. And this is the executive function. If you notice in the hand, the prefrontal cortex right here goes over the other parts of the brain. And that's what it does in our real brains as well. It's the regulatory function. And it's also our ability to be logical, to problem solve, and be empathetic. So today, we don't have to worry about wild animals attacking us, but we are in the most stressful time in our lifetimes to be parents. And our brains read fear and stress in the same way. In that, your kids' triggering behavior, especially when you're tired, you're hungry, you have financial or relationship stress, will cause you to flip your lid. And that's when you lose access to your executive function. You can't regulate the stress response system. Fight, flight, or freeze is now running the show, and you lose your ability to be compassionate and empathetic, to be problem solve, and be logical thinking in those moments. Okay, so for most parents, and I'm going to pull up this slide. For most parents, it's really liberating to know you're not a bad parent if you're flipping your lid with your kids. And some parents like me, I'm a little bit fiery type, so I am a yeller, but other parents withdraw or they literally like freeze up in those stressful moments. Okay. This summarizes the three parts of the brain and what each is responsible for. Okay. So just think about and be that gentle observer where you see clearly, but you have compassion for yourself. What are your main triggers to flip your lid as a parent? Maybe it is a hungry or tired. Maybe it's this certain behavior. I'm working a lot with the tweens going into teens, and that disrespect for a lot of us, like that is a flipped lid trigger. A lot of times it's crying. It's the strong-willed kids. So what is it for you? You're welcome to share in the chat or just reflect on that for yourself and just know that that is a physiological response. Okay. So the main moral of the story, lack of a better word for brain in the palm of your hand, is when we have a flipped lid, we want to learn how to just take care of ourselves in that moment and not try and discipline or problem solve. If you have young children, you might be having a flipped lid and also have to deal with safety issues. And it's very challenging. That's something I help support parents on. Okay. But a lot of times we're just triggered and then we go into like, let me solve this now. Let me fix this, or let me make my child pay for this. Let's write this right now. And if you think about it, just wanting to, again, learn how to take care of yourself, because if you don't have access to the logical, problem solving, compassionate, empathetic part of our brain, right? That's not the time to do the teaching. Okay. So what I work with parents, and thank you again if you're sharing about your flipped lid, is how to develop those muscles of connection. Okay. We are always going to have what's called ruptures in connection. You're never going to be perfect. We're always going to be flipping our lid, because otherwise we'd be parent robots, right? And especially during this high stress time. But what I help parents with, and what you can get a lot of tools and support for, Dr. Dan Siegel has many books right now to develop your muscles. Just like people go to the gym and develop those muscles, you can develop your muscles of connection, so you can recover faster when you do flip your lid, and ultimately decrease the frequency and intensity of flipped lid moments in your life. So just know that that totally is possible. It's just a bit of a practice. Okay. Within that, we mentioned basic needs earlier. Unmet basic needs are at the root cause of challenging flipped lid behavior. I want to say that again. Unmet basic needs. This is for you as a parent and for your children. They are the root cause of every flipped lid. Okay. Again, you and your kids are good people. You're just having a human experience. Okay. So in positive discipline, we borrow this acronym of HALTS that they use in Alcoholics Anonymous. From a recovery perspective, people are more likely to relapse when they have unmet basic needs. From a parenting perspective, us and our children are more likely to have negative behavior and flip our lids when we have unmet basic needs. So hungry, food or water. Even little kids like 3-year-olds, I hear them talking about hangry, right, these days, right? That brings us to angry. That's an umbrella for all negative emotions. Okay. And so, what are the positive outlets to express high emotions in safe and healthy ways? That's the basic need. And most of us didn't have that modeled for us as children. Okay. Lonely, those are the connection needs, which are huge right now. You might legitimately just need a minute for yourself. And it doesn't seem like it's possible to get that during this time. You might be missing time with the other adults in your life. You might want alone time with your mate. And for your kids, we're going to talk about in a moment, quality time with you is a basic human need for them, just like food and water. Okay. A lot of people are having sleep issues, insomnia during the pandemic, and also sleep regressions in kids, babies, toddlers, preschoolers, like giving up a nap, all those changes that can go on. Okay. So then we have, I added on the S for working with families to stand for sick or stressed. Okay. Sick can be, con- fear about getting COVID. Maybe you or your family have experienced it, or another family member. Cold and flu season is coming with us. In addition, some people are also dealing with chronic illness during this time, okay? Or just stress. And stress comes in the form of um, negative suboptimal childhood experiences, those ACEs, stress from the inequities and injustices of the world, and just present day financial and relationship stress. Okay. And the basic need for that as an umbrella category would be rest, more incoming support, or addressing, knowing that they're being addressed the inequities in the world. Okay. So here's the thing with halts. What are the main halts right now during this time that your family is working with? Okay. If you can meet the need to transform the negative behavior, that's the goal. If you know your kids get aggressive when they're hungry, start thinking about your food plan for them. Okay. With the sleep, especially during the pandemic, we don't want to be missing kids' sleep windows. They actually, if we miss their sleep window, they actually get a hit of cortisol and they get that second wind or they melt down. Okay. So there might be, if you think about it for a moment, just some basic things you can put in place to make your life easier and to stay in that place of connection. Okay. But families often tell me, Megan, we're working with all of those halts all of the time. And if that's the case, especially during this pandemic, that's why it's essential lowering expectations. Be good to yourself. Take things off your to-do list. Give your kids a little more grace and really focus on the positive relationship, which we're going to talk about next. Okay. Working with HALT in your family. Okay. Because stabilizing basic needs as much as possible, putting in place a realistic and responsive plan for your family based on unmet basic needs is one of the most powerful things that you can do for your family. And sometimes I know it's ongoing work, right? It's not like we finish it. It's a journey because life is always changing. Okay. To work with basic needs in your family, just get in the habit of doing regular basic needs scans. Okay, where are we at with all these different halts right now? And then from there, that's when you're setting your expectations for virtual school for that day. Okay. Again, meeting the need to transform the challenging behavior when possible, when not, lowering expectations and maintaining positive relationship connection. Okay. We're going to dive into this. What does that mean? Maintaining connection. We're going to dive into this right now. Any other reflections on halts or questions or experiences to share, please do pop them in the comments, okay? So, and if you have questions that are coming up around the content, or as I'm going through this, you're like, this is it. Like, this is core to my family's experience right now, or my family's challenges right now. You can post the specific question or challenge you're working with, and then Jenny's going to read the questions at the end. Okay. So what we say in this happy homework that I teach is that connection equals cooperation. In that, when you're in a place of connection with yourself and your kids feel connected to you, that's when cooperation happens most naturally. And this is what we want, right? We want our kids to cooperate naturally. We don't want to have to yell, threaten, bribe, punish, or reward. The question is, when cooperation doesn't happen, then where do we go from there? And we're going to dive into that when we talk about the specific tools, okay? But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what does connection mean, okay? Connection, the way that I explain it, is if you picture like your everyday self is connected to your highest or best self as a parent, okay? Within that, your prefrontal cortex is engaged, okay? And when I talk about your highest, your everyday self to your highest or best self, in the Muppets movie, I don't know if any of you have seen that. There's this time where Kermit the Frog has led the rest of the Muppets astray and they're in the desert and he's feeling so right? Like it's like his parenting guilt has kicked in. So at first he starts off and he's talking real negative about himself, like when we make a parenting mistake. And then you see this like double Kermit come in and the double Kermit is like so compassionate, like, oh, but you wanted the best. That's when like, oh, but you're really focusing on the kids being respectful. Oh, but Kermit, you were this. And that's the example that I use for like our everyday self. You want your everyday self, because there's so many challenges and stress during the pandemic, to really stay connected to your highest self, okay, and your best self. The brain science of that is when you have that full brain integration where your prefrontal cortex is in its rightful place as the CEO of your brain, okay? Keeping in mind that we are not robots, and ruptures in connection where we flip our lid, we disconnect from our highest and best selves, they're always going to be part of the parenting experience, okay? And that's a time to really practice that compassion. So with our kids though, and this is a big topic, just keep in mind, we hear a lot about self-regulation with kids. It's not really realistic or brain science appropriate. It's more co-regulation. Your kids are regulating off of you. So when we can do everything we can to support you and your place of connection, then you're modeling and literally growing self-regulation for your children, okay? And that's just some of the power and the responsibility of parenting, okay? And that connection is a muscle you can develop over time. Great book is Parenting from the Inside Out by Dr. Dan Siegel that he actually wrote with his kids' preschool teacher. Okay. Now, from our kids, so we have the kind of this lofty understanding, this Kermit the Frog way of looking at your everyday self connected with your highest and best self, and your prefrontal cortex is engaged. Okay, so with our kids, my mentor in positive discipline says attention is a poor substitute for connection. So a lot of kids right now during the pandemic are in negative attention seeking cycles. And why does that happen? Is because, well, it's actually really easy to get into a pattern. Okay, you have your children's developmentally appropriate challenging behavior. Okay, and either you're under stress or you're not exactly sure what to do, and you, like human parents do, sometimes you respond negatively, right? But what happens? That intensifies your children's negative behavior, and then you react more negatively. And everything I do is to help parents prevent and get out of this cycle, because sadly, I know of these, not in my practice, more in my circle, where it's like this negative feedback loop, it's a pattern and it becomes a child's character because it goes on for 10 or 12 years, okay? So just know, we all get in these cycles, that positive change is totally possible, and it just means you need more support to change the cycle, okay? So that being said, well, the way that we look at connection for our kids, and sorry, is that human relationship for our kids. Connection with you is a basic human need, like food, water, and shelter. So, right now, you might be thinking, Megan, what are you talking about? I'm with my kids all the time. How am I not having enough time with my kids, right? But our children really need the high quality, positive time with us to grow their brains. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time, right? And the way that I explain this time is just that from a positive discipline perspective, we do recommend it is about 15 to 30 minutes a day right now during the pandemic because kids aren't having other social support. And what I recommend parents do is just hide your phone and set a timer like on the fridge, okay? And then you can also picture, if you're a visual person, you can like draw a window in the air and picture that you're entering into your children's world. And during this time, all you have to do is really just, if you have young children, sit next to them and follow their lead and play. If you have older children, you might want to set up the activities that are enjoyable to both of you that you can do together, okay? During this time, and actually you can do this part anytime during the day, just look at your kids, enjoy them, look at like their smiles, where they are developmentally, what they're into. You're doing so amazing, and it's so much energy and can be so draining to be a parent during this pandemic. Just spend some time and be like, wow, these are some cool people I'm raising, and just enjoy your kids wherever they're at, okay? Because kids have that basic need for connection. When you fill it preventatively with this quality time, or even just start like spending those bursts of time, it can be 30 seconds throughout the day, looking at your kids and just like laughing with them and like truly enjoying them, some found that the negative attention seeking behavior, they don't have to do anything else. It disappears on its own. Now, I can't guarantee that, but it can happen, okay? Because kids have that basic human need to develop their brains for connection and quality time with you. If they don't get it filled in a positive way, what they know how to do is get it filled any way they can, and that's when those negative feedback loops can come into play, okay? And I do feel guilty, like during a pandemic, to encourage you to spend more time, like more presence with your children. But again, if it can be a motivator that it's going to improve their behavior and you're literally growing their brains and hopefully soothing your stress levels as well, I hope that that's like a real life motivator, okay, within that. What are some of your favorite quality time activities with your children? What have you, and this is if you'd like some criteria from a positive discipline perspective on quality time, I encourage you to screenshot this. And Jenny, I hope that actually I can send you the slides because we'll have the replay posted. So maybe we can get these out to parents too, because there's a lot more detailed information that I'm going over. Okay. So favorite quality time activities, and really let's be honest and real. What are the challenges to quality time, especially during the pandemic? And then start thinking about the logistics. Like, when could you do this? When could you get short bursts of quality time in? What would you be doing? Where would it be? And how? And then it's also the challenge, if you have multiple children, do they need one-on-one? Is it just you? Do you have is there another caregiver, parent in the picture? Okay, so start thinking about some of those logistics. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water, and actually I'll leave this. Feel free to share anything and post your questions, real life challenge as well. I'll post this so you can look over the criteria. Okay. So within that, Let's go into the practical parenting tools that we'll wrap up with tonight. Okay, so this is another tool of connection. And so I want to ask you these questions. Do you tend to struggle with transitions with your kids? That is the number one challenge, that one of the number one challenges parents face is transitions, right? Do you feel like your children don't listen until you actually yell at them? Do you find yourself resorting to threats, consequences, or rewards, bribing, and incentives? If you're being honest with yourself, do you tend to bark orders across the room, or do you expect your children to operate off your adult priorities and schedules? And maybe you're not communicating those schedule needs enough, okay? Do you think that there's any way that you confuse your children not listening? Like, my kids just don't listen to me, they don't cooperate, with, in all reality, it could be that your children actually aren't even hearing you, that they're in their kid world of play and it's not even registering in their minds what you just said. Okay. If you identify with any of those, this is a wonderful tool. It's from conscious discipline. Okay. Because most of us do get into habits of barking orders across the room. And why is that? It's because we're stressed. We have too much on our plate and we're doing too much at once. Okay. This tool, though, will save you time in the long run. Put down what you're doing, you get on your child's level, eye level, and make eye contact, right? Then you include positive physical touch, like a hand on the shoulder. If it's an older child, maybe a hug, hold your child's hand. Little kids, they sit on your lap. Be present with your kids, make sure your phone's away, and then really focus on the moment. What is the task at hand? What would you like to see happen? And also connect with where your child is emotionally. Maybe they're having some unmet basic needs for connection during that time, okay? Or maybe they have another halt going on. Then you want to say exactly, like for a transition, shoes, brush your teeth, breakfast. And then from that, including just like a little bit, if humor seems like too much or being playful, just like a smile or a laugh, like make a funny noise, make a joke, turn into whatever you're saying, turn it into a song. Okay. Parents in my programs have had so much success with this tool. Okay. I want it to be another motivator for you, because the reality is when we're doing 5 million things at once and we do scream those orders across the room and our kids aren't listening, it's so frustrating and it can lead to power struggles and meltdown. And honestly, it can take so long to move through a routine. This tool, it's going to take a little more time in the beginning, or it's going to feel like it's going to take more time, but it's going to save you so much time and energy in the long run. And hopefully, it's going to be so much more of a positive relationship connection with your children that does result in cooperation naturally. Okay. So, the other thing that has been amazing to see with parents, I really want you to trust in the power of your clear communication of expectations, okay, to transform some of the behavior challenges in your home. A lot of times, as parents, again, because of high stress, we think we're communicating what it's time for our kids to do because we're thinking it, but we haven't actually stated the expectation to them. Okay. And also giving reminders about what we expect. Okay. So I want you to really believe in yourself and your ability to communicate clearly with your children and have it result in cooperation. Okay. So within that, any questions about this connection and communication? How are you already using the tool at home? Or what's an area where you could bring this tool in? Okay. So these are with the specific tools. Okay. So we've been talking about quality time, right? And the communication and connection. And then there is one parenting tool that is going to work 80 to 90% of the time, unless your kids have a lot of halts going on. Does anyone want to guess what that tool is? And I'm going to sip a little more water. Okay. So that tool is using play as a discipline tool. Play is the only tool that's going to consistently and effectively maintain that connection with your kids so they can cooperate with you. Again, unless if your children have unmet basic needs. Okay. So for most of us, we think of play as like that quality time play. But thinking about using play as a discipline tool, what does that really look like? Okay, well, let's talk about what is the definition of discipline? I actually thought discipline meant to punish. Yeah, wasn't expecting play, right? I know. And it's another thing, if you have resistance, please just know I did as well. Okay. But here is the framework for that. Discipline, it doesn't mean to punish. I always thought it did. Discipline, the root of the word means to teach. Okay. So our responsibility for our children is to teach them, to discipline them. And for children, the number one way that they learn is through play, right? Especially in early childhood, we notice this. And sadly, like as our kids get older, their educational experience tends to be less playful. Okay. So if our job is to teach our kids and play is the number one way that kids learn, well, then play is our number one teaching tool. It is a little bit of an art form to learn how to use play as your teaching tool. Okay. And again, it's something that I know I had resistance about. Okay. So play, you may feel like, I don't have the energy to be a playful parent. And I totally get that. You might feel like I don't have the skills. I don't know how to do that. Or I'm not funny. I'm not going to be good at it. And here's the cool thing about our kids is they're not judging, your ability the quality of your playful parenting-ness, right? Well, that's not altogether true. If you have a tween or teen, they are, right? But play looks different with early childhood than with our older kids. And we'll talk about that in a moment, okay? Here's why I'm such a proponent. The main reason, play is a right-brained activity, okay? Right-brained activities soothe stress levels. Art, meditation, music, dance, being out in nature, emotional connection, being with pets. Play is in that category. You can utilize play as a teaching tool to get cooperation almost effortlessly with your children once you learn. Within that, what does that look like? Simple. And I'd love to hear if some of you already feel like you are in the playful parenting category, right? If you identify that, are you already a playful parent? And then share some of the tools that you use, okay? Super simple. Again, go back to transitions. You're going to sing it. Instead of saying it, you're going to make it into a song. The last time when we actually met in person, I know a mom with her toddler, power struggles during the diaper change, and she made up this silly diaper changing song, and then diaper changes were effortless after that. Just say it in a silly voice. Okay. Using a timer, let's set the timer for cleanup and go for it. It doesn't have to be competitive. I know that parents have brought in the favorite stuffy, right, to help the child get ready in the morning. Have the stuffy teach it or say it. You can, when you're teaching positive behavior, like using gentle hands with a sibling or asking for something politely, you can go through the scenario and actually act it out. In that way, you're modeling the behavior. Okay. This was a quick overview of some of the tools of play. And I'd love to, when we open up, so I'm wondering if anyone would like to volunteer, which we're going to open up here very soon for the group coaching support. Would anyone like to get some support or have a question on how to use play for a really challenging parenting or a parenting challenge? Okay. So yeah, so think about that. Number one behavioral challenge, and can we bring a tool of play in? Okay. So what we're helping you do tonight as we're wrapping up, even during the pandemic, it's never been more important because life is so stressful to help you shift from reactive to proactive parenting, which is based on having your needs met so you can be in a place of connection or making a realistic and responsive plan for your children. Really transforming negative behavior interactions and preventing them from happening in the beginning through quality time and the connection and communication, and really figuring out how you can utilize this magic tool of play as your discipline tool. Okay. So I think what we'll do right now, let's see. I did want to, before we go into the Q&A, and I do want to invite you to stay connected. On my website, I do have create a free guide, creating a happy home in the pandemic. And my website, I'll show you where that is. You can also chat me. Make sure you don't chat everyone for privacy reasons. This is totally optional. If you want to get this to my Sunday message list, then just chat me only your email address. Also on Facebook, I have a Parenting for the Next Generation Facebook group where I hold Happy Home Live Masterclass trainings for an entire week of free trainings. The next one's the week of January 4th. And if you, again, this is totally optional. If you want some individualized support after this training and learn more about my Happy Home offerings, please do schedule a free 30-minute positive parenting breakthrough session. I think the photos changed on my website, but this is, oh shucks, and that link is scheduled, it changed as well. So anyway, it might be easier if you want to message me, again, just me, not everyone, your email address, and then I'll get in touch after the training. So thank you everyone for being here. Oh, great. We're right at 7:30. Thank you so much, because that was a lot of content to go through. So as we wrap up that part, there was a lot of information. What is the thing that really resonated with you? Your one closing focus area that you want to bring alive in your family?